Hey, welcome. We're online again with AWS on air during reInvent. It's been 3 great, long, hard, exhausting, exciting weeks. And today we're going to talk about AWS Well-Architected and the Well-Architected Tool API, which has just been announced. And this is going to be a long show, and I brought a number of guests. The first two that we have here are Samir and Bryan from the Well-Architected team. Samir, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks, Dennis. Hi, I'm Samir Kopal. I'm the software development manager. I lead the engineering teams for Well-Architected. Excited to be here.
Great. And what about you, Bryan?
Bryan Strokes. I'm the product manager for the Well-Architected tool. I'll say I've been here about 7.5 months, and my first reInvent, at least on this side of the table. Super excited to be here.
So it's your first service launch, your first feature launch at reInvent. Congratulations. That's a great achievement after 7 months. Nice.
Thank you.
So what is Well-Architected?
Sure. So the Well-Architected framework, and we'll mention the framework and the tool. The framework helps architects build secure, high-performing, resilient, efficient infrastructures for their applications. What's interesting is it started kind of as an aggregation of architectural best practices based on those thousands of hours our SAs spent working with our customers. The Well-Architected tool was kind of born out of the desire to enable our customers to perform those reviews themselves, to really understand how their architecture stacks up, get those insights from AWS and work to prove or work to improve their architecture.
Yeah, I see. Maybe to mention for the audience, I used to be a solutions architect before being the developer advocate as well. So I used the Well-Architected framework a lot. And what's interesting about it is it basically looks at the architecture of your workload, of your application from 5 perspectives, the 5 pillars. Samir, can you give me a few examples about the 5 pillars of the Well-Architected framework?
Yeah, for sure. The 5 pillars, let's just start with naming some of those. So security, I think that's something that's important as we build our workloads. Everyone's talking about, how secure it's going to be, and especially as things get more and more digital, as there is a lot more data, security becomes, a priority one for a lot of our customers, right? And then moving on, you have things like performance, which is extremely critical. People have become so immune to like having highly performant systems, right? And as software engineers, I can tell you that it's not an easy job. So making sure we follow all the best practices. There is cost, right? In especially this year, a lot of us have had to go back and look at how's the cost, like there's peak traffic that's coming in, how are we going to scale? So cost optimization becomes a thing. Reliability, of course, is something that's important. Systems being 24/7 year-round. There's no downtime that people kind of expect these days. I remember back in the days where we would have like, you're going to take your website down for, it's going to be down for maintenance for 5 hours. I don't see that anymore. And
yeah, we had these little icons with people on a construction site, construction
right.
workers under website under construction, right? Yeah, right.
And then the last one I'll mention is operational excellence, which is the near and dear one to me. I think it's talking about how you're going to deploy, how you're going to make sure that your system can respond to incidents that happen. Are you making sure that you have not just engineering excellence but operational excellence across the board? So these are the 5 pillars, and it focuses on best practices that we've learned, as Bryan mentioned, from doing thousands of reviews that we've done with customers. We go ahead and do those internally, try to learn more things, and then share that with our customers.
Yeah, and so the Well-Architected tool helps our customers themselves to go through these Well-Architected reviews, which maybe review sounds a little bit like an audit, but it is not an audit. It really helps you ask the right questions and understand how security works in the cloud, how operations work in the cloud, cost effectiveness, performance, and reliability. And the tool now has an API. Why does it need an API? What can a customer do with that?
So I and I want to pitch something to Samir in a second, but the reason we have the API is the well-architected tool provides great insights, but it can't operate in a silo. One thing we heard from our customers since its launch in 2018 is we needed to interconnect with the systems that we use to for IT management and for risk management. So they need to take all those insights and they need to bring it into those tools they use on a daily basis. And that is why we really needed to extend the platform with APIs.
I see. Yeah. And speaking of tools, I mean, that's probably not only our own tools, probably not only AWS tools. We work with partners as well, right?
Absolutely. And we work with a number of partners, and we're actually going to see some demos from them today. What's great is we worked with a number of partners prior to the launch of APIs because we knew our customers were already using cloud management systems. So we worked with those like Trend Micro, CloudOne, NOps, Splunk, to ensure that they were pre-integrated. They're available today to use with Well-Architected if you're already using their product.
And speaking of ANOPS, I actually have somebody from ANOPS here in the studio. JT Giri, welcome.
Hey,
how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Great. So maybe why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. My name is JT Giri. I'm the CEO of ANOPS. Just a little bit of background on myself. I've been migrating companies to AWS ever since EC2 was in beta. This is my first virtual AWS reInvent. I've been to all the reInvent sessions, as Dennis, as we were talking about prior to the session. It's fun, exciting. There's a lot of sessions. It's continuing over 3 weeks, so there's a lot of learning. But would love to go back to Vegas next year.
Yes, I hope we see each other. We all see each other there next year. All right. Why don't you show us what ANOPS has done with the Well-Architected Tool API?
For sure. Yeah. So
Here we go.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think, as I mentioned, Dennis, I've been migrating companies to AWS for a very long time. And, several years ago, we started developing ANOPS because, we were really wanted to build a solution to manage dynamic environments. And, I think in dynamic environments, when you have a lot of people making changes, a lot of developers, a lot of engineers making changes, you really want to validate the pros and cons of those decisions. And in my mind, Well-Architected framework is the best way to kind of validate your decisions, to understand the pros and cons of your decisions. And you end up making a lot of decisions in the cloud, right? When you're building like microservices or when you're building architecture on AWS. So I'll demonstrate like how do you do Well-Architected sort of assessment real time, and how do you leverage the Well-Architected API to actually synchronize, what you have learned to the Well-Architected tool. So let me start with the real-time Well-Architected. So in ANOPS, you can actually just maybe look for prod, or you can look for, stage, dev, VPC, anything you can think of, and then you can kind of see how well you're architected. What are those resources? Who launched those resources? Are there any issues? Are these resources not following Well-Architected best practices? So in this case, I'm searching for prod and kind of seeing what are some of the issues. And really, it comes down to kind of understand like what trade-offs you need to make, right? So here are some issues in prod. We show you, what are some of the new issues in prod, and then you can make decision, right? For example, we detected on December 10 that one of the CloudWatch log groups in production is kind of running on low on IO traffic, right? So if you think this is an issue that you want to fix, you can actually, maybe start a discussion with the developers. You can create a Jira ticket, and things like that. So we make it very easy for you to kind of look at your dynamic workload, and we allow you to kind of make decisions, right? Like well-architected is like I said, is the only way, the best way to kind of prioritize, right? Maybe encryption on S3 bucket is the highest priority for you in a production workload, or maybe multi-AZ is the highest priority, right? So we allow you to kind of make those decisions.
Yeah, I can see up there. It's really along the 5 pillars that we talked about just before with Samir, right? Yeah,
for sure. And then it's like, if you wanted to kind of look at like prod once again, to kind of see what are some of the issues in prod for security, for cost, for reliability, we just make it very, very easy. We show you, hey, this is how your resources are distributed. There are volumes in prod which are not getting backed up. Again, end of the day, you have to kind of make that decision, right? Well-architected is all about like looking at the pros and cons of these decisions.
Yeah, so right. It's guidance. It's not you have to do it that way. There are many best practices. There is not the best practice. There are many best practices, but there are definitely bad practices. And the well-architected framework and the tool and ANOPS with your application really helps understanding what trade-offs do we make in our architecture, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's the most powerful thing, because you can make those decisions based on your workload. So speaking of workload, now we have a native integration with the well-architected API. So I'll maybe create a new workload here. We allow you to synchronize the workload to the well-architected tool. You can specify which workload, so which account you want to push this workload to. You can select, what is the workload type. We're going to be supporting a lot of different lenses, so you can select, for example, if it's a serverless lens and things like that. Dennis, this is where it gets interesting. So what you can do, you can actually select your resources. So if you want to select all like test resources, or if you want to select a VPC, you can define your workload, and then you can create your workload, and then I'll show you what that looks like. So once you define your workload, you can look at all the resources, you can look at all the issues for that resources. You can upload diagrams, you can upload infrastructure documentation. You can kind of see where do you stand on best practices. So it's just really powerful. And then you can start this assessment. And I highly recommend, Dennis, it sounds like you've been doing, work building infrastructure for a very long time. I think one of the challenges we see is that people normally just maybe they don't spend time like kind of looking at why they made certain decisions, right? So what we do is we auto discover some of the well-architected questions. So for example, we are able to find out that there's like this particular issue. We found some issues related to this question. But as an SA or as a DevOps engineer, you could also like document your findings. So let's say if you wanted to kind of look at all the CloudWatch issues, you can quickly kind of say like, hey, I found out that this CloudWatch is running low, or not running low, but has very low bandwidth traffic. And now you can attach these resources to the well-architected assessment. And again, Dennis, it's not assessment part like like saying, hey, you're doing this piece wrong. It's just allowing engineers to have a discussion with other teams.
Yeah, right.
And now,
Right, to make informed decisions. It's really about, I mean, even if there is something that the well-architected tool says, okay, that could be a risk, you can decide, no, for us it's not a risk. But part of architecture really is also documenting the decisions that you make and why you make them. And that is really helpful because I can really see, okay, we've asked these questions, we've talked about this, we've discussed it, and we came to the conclusion that for us, this is not an issue. And that is a valuable piece of information as well.
100%. And Dennis, maybe you guys decided as a team that this is high risk issue, and you prioritize that. You create a Jira ticket. So in a way, just like Agile helps you to prioritize and build a roadmap for your software development, the way we see it, Well-Architected helps you to build, helps you to prioritize and build a roadmap for your infrastructure issues. So I'll just quickly touch on the report. Once you have all your documentation, once you create Jira ticket and you kind of attach all your findings, you could download this report and actually exported it already. So you have your recommendations and you're highlighting your resources. And you'll have links to your Jira issues and things like that. This is really powerful, Dennis, because now you can say, hey, these are the issues we're working on. This is high risk issues. These are the resources we should fix. These are IM roles that are unused. I think we should prioritize that. So it is so powerful to have that discussion and combine, the well-architected API and also, do auto discovery, attach resources. And prioritize your roadmap. And I foresee people leveraging the well-architected API for other things, like when you send a pull request or when you do a deployment from Jenkins. I think this is going to be a powerful way to kind of evaluate your decision going forward on AWS.
Yeah, that's a really powerful augmentation to the well-architected tool and well-architected framework. Thank you, JT, for introducing this to us. Thanks for being on the show. And I'm going to bring back Bryan. Here we go. All right, Bryan and Samir, what are some other typical use cases for customers to use the well-architected tool API?
Yeah, I can speak to some of those, right? We just saw a few that JD highlighted in his demo. One of the key ones that we see is, pulling data out of the well-architected tool, right? A lot of people want to have day-to-day processes integrated with well-architected, right? Into their own management and governance tools that they have. And as they want to do that, I see a very strong case for reporting, for the ability for people to get those workloads and start seeing this single pane of glass kind of a view across their organizations, across their enterprises, that they can start seeing where things are. I've a few of our customers have already told us that they want to have they have cloud center of excellence teams that focus on different aspects of well-architected. So you'll have someone who's just focused on security, someone on performance, and as they do that, they want to start seeing things not just for a single workload, but across, right, a portfolio of things. So that's one use case. The other thing that I'd add there is a lot of times we use libraries, or we use certain things across our companies. So for example, authentication for all applications goes through a single service, right? And something like that. So the answers to that workload is going to be the same. So how do you manage your credentials is probably the same for everybody. And you don't want everyone to go in and start saying the same, answering the same thing.
Yeah, right. Once an application has been vetted throughout the organization, there's no need for every team to go through that again and try to understand the intricacies. It's just like if you have a compliance audit. Some of the things that AWS takes care of, we take care of the security of the cloud. So if you have a compliance audit, you can point at our documentation and say, listen, AWS takes care of that, of the data centers, of the physical security and everything, and we take care of using encryption in a proper way. And I think it's very similar when it comes to architecture. To assessing an architecture, really to say we do use a certain security libraries, for instance, or we do use KMS for encryption, and we do use IAM maybe with an Active Directory connector for our identity and access management. And this is something that everybody uses, so we can put it into the tool for every team to use, and they don't have to basically fill out everything themselves, right?
Absolutely right. So you could just write, you could write an application that can automatically create workloads. So it could be integrated that every time you go ahead and build something out, it automatically creates a workload in the well-architected tool for you, pre-fills some of the questions. It can be used to add notes. It can be used to select the best practices you're already following. So some of that thing, it takes away the effort of doing the same thing over and over again, right? So that is something that is going to be very handy for our customers for sure.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I would just add that probably since we've launched the APIs less than 24 hours, I've already spoken to 2 customers that we're asking around, can these be used to automate, to kind of automate the creation of those workloads, to really simplify and make sure that every workload and account that are created in their accounts has a review associated with it.
Yeah,
I think
that's
another thing
Please go ahead.
that I'll talk about in terms of the API usage, right? We have the whole thing of like you can create workloads, you can update them. We talked about that. One of the things, and I think JD touched on it slightly as well, was about automating those best practices outside, right? So having those third-party integrations. I think a Jira integration that JD showed was again a good use case. So having automation where you can just run those scripts or checks on your end and then use that automation to write back. Also, with well-architected, the review becomes a historical context, or it becomes like a current state record of your architecture, right? A lot of times you've gone into like legacy software and you're like, well, who did this and why did they do it? And there is no way to actually figure that out, right? We've
Yeah,
all had those conversations.
Yeah, that's a very important point regarding the well-architected framework and the well-architected review. This is not a one-time thing that you do basically just before you go live. You do a well-architected review every now and then, just when you start building your application, also when you're in production, you do it over and over again and learn from it and apply best practices and so forth. So it's not one thing, and it also is not a gate. But what I had just as an example of the reusability that we just talked about, back when I was a solutions architect, I supported a global customer in the healthcare life science space, and they literally have thousands of workloads. And I did a number of well-architected review, and every time we had the question as part of security, we had the question, does your organization have a data classification framework, like public, confidential, secret, top secret, and so forth? And I was the one answering the question because I knew, because I had done so many of these with the customer, I knew the organization's framework probably better than many of the teams. And this is something we still had to fill it out every time. It is good because the teams were aware of the fact that there is a framework in place, but at the same time, it was tedious work because we had to go through it over and over again, even though that was an organizational thing and it was set in throughout the organization. And that would have been something where I would really have loved to have an API where I can just go in and say, okay, we do have a framework and it consists of this and this and this, and there are the documents that describe it. That's what I would have needed. Would have been great.
Yeah, it's totally a continuous improvement process, right? Following all best practices. It's a point in state, it's a point in time kind of a state of the architecture, right? You make a slight change, and you can go from saying following best practice to not following best practice, right? Yeah. So something like that. So yeah, it's like we do encourage people to go back, review your workloads on a periodic basis, make sure that, as I said, documentation becomes a key aspect of it, and making sure you collaborate with teams well on that also helps. So overall, I'm looking forward to how the APIs are going to enable some of these things.
Yeah, me too. Sounds exciting. We do have another guest, and I'm trying to find my mouse. We do have another guest, Aaron. Aaron, welcome. How are you?
Hello, I am well. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah,
sorry we're not in Vegas.
Yeah, it's a shame, but on the other hand, I get to see my family, which is nice as well.
I bet.
So, Aaron, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Aaron Ansari. I'm the Vice President for CloudOne in North America for Trend Micro. Here at Trend, we're a great partner with AWS in the security space, specifically in the marketplace. And I've been with Trend for a couple of years via way of an acquisition of a technology called Cloud Conformity, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, cool. And I think you brought something with you to show us. Right?
I did. Yeah. What I wanted to do is actually showcase Cloud Conformity for everyone. And what you can see here is that we're built with alignment to the well-architected framework. I mean, there's a reason we're on this phone call. One of the principle zero that we adopt with CloudOne Conformity is the well-architected framework is your baseline. Any workload, any environment that you are building should, and in fact, as you can see here, must be aligned to the well-architected framework. And what we do is we take the rules and elements of the well-architected framework and we scan those against your account to create a baseline. And so what you see here is a baseline of where you are in the security pillar, where you are in the cost optimization, where you are in reliability, and so on, right? And then you take each of those as your starting point to improve your posture of how you're set up. And when you do that, you become much, much more aligned with the best practices of the framework. But we go a step further. So one of the other things that we'll do is we'll give you the capacity to actually see what we're asking, element by element, pillar by pillar, entitlement by entitlement. So we can go through and say, hey, all right, we've done a scan of your environment. We've figured out how and where it lives according to the well-architected framework. Let's take a look at your workloads and your services and map them back exactly to the operational IDs of the pillars that make up the framework, right? And so we take this approach to make it so that you, the customer or the consumer of the AWS services, have a greater understanding of where and how you can improve your alignment on a second by second, minute by minute basis and adhere to that. Because when you do, let's be honest, when you do, you're more compliant, you're more secure, you're more, cost optimized and all those sorts of things. You're also better off in your relationship with AWS. You have a better understanding of the services in which you're using with AWS. And from an AWS perspective, you're much more sticky with your usage of AWS because you're utilizing all the services, you're using the frameworks and the tools to kind of build off of. So what we did today with this announcement is we went a step further. We actually went deeper with this API. So what we're able to do is actually go through and look at what is happening by instance and by service, and take a couple of rules to go through and showcase to you how and what and who is doing changes, updates, modifications in your environment on a rule by rule basis and map those back to the specific categories. So we can go through here and we can say, hey, let's take the metadata that's put in the AWS Well-Architected tool and tell you who's doing what right here. And so we changed these account IDs. So don't worry that there's an account ID shown here. It'll change in 10 minutes. But we can actually go through and say, hey, look, we did this as a lens comparison to the Well-Architected tool embedded within AWS. We also did it with our solution and our service. We stacked those up. Looks like this is happening. Let's go through and recommend and give you some modifications that need to be to make this more compliant. And let's pass this data back to the well-architected tool so you can use this in config and guard duty and Macy and Macy 2 or whatever else that you're
maybe
using.
like the systems manager, change manager that we've just introduced.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
so when you were talking about your role as a systems architect, I was smiling from ear to ear because it's exactly what we find day to day, basis by basis, customer by customer. And so Bryan, you'd mentioned you spoke with a customer. We did the same. So we actually spoke with a customer and reviewed our capacity to do this and the value that we give to them. And my paycheck's signed by Trend Micro, so my alliance is here. But he was blown away, right? He was like, "This is fantastic. This is exactly what I need," because they're in a high-paced environment, lots of developers, many changes, heavy reliance on AWS and the services that are there. And so being able to see and tie this back to the resource that was doing it, the person that was doing it, and the well-architected tool to then tie back to the services just made his day. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it makes it much more visible what's happening, and things that might happen that lead you to violate certain things, certain best practices or compliance or something like that. And on the other hand, really be able to track back to when did we fix this, and we can actually prove when did we fix this when asked.
Very much so.
Yeah,
and it accelerates that, right? So we can not only prove it, a day after the fact, a week after the fact, a month after the fact, we can prove it a second after the fact, a minute after the fact, and really get that AWS, the well-architected process ingrained in the way that the developers develop. And when you make it part of their development lifecycle, be it agile or whatever, it simply takes a couple of releases for every developer to start thinking well-architected. And when you do that and you develop it this way, you certainly get closer to the build, and you get closer to the hands-on keyboard sort of development to make well-architected ingrained in part of it. And that's what we aim to do here, and that's what we're doing. Yeah,
that's great. I like that. Cool. Well, thanks, Aaron. Thanks for giving us some insight.
My pleasure.
Thanks for being on the show. And thanks for being a partner. Just same to you, JT. Thanks to all our partners. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do what we do and to bring the value to our customer that we do. So thanks for being a launch partner. And I'm going to switch back to just 1 second. I've got two more guests on the show. That's Rodney and Lauren. Here we go. So, hey, the two of you, both are from the Well-Architected team as well. Lauren, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, Dennis, thanks for having me. Lauren Small, I am the Well-Architected ISV Program Manager here at AWS. I have been here at AWS for about 5 years and looking forward to doing reInvent virtually this year.
Yeah, Rodney, what about you?
So my name is Rodney Lester. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect with the Well-Architected program. I've been with AWS it'll be 9 years in March. Been with Well-Architected for about 3.5 years. And I've been part of Well-Architected since its very beginnings. So I actually experienced the whole story that we tell about how we got to where we're at.
Yeah, we should have a drink next year at reInvent maybe, and you tell me about that. I'm really interested in that. Cool. So we're going to talk about the Well-Architected Lenses, right? We got the chance to talk a little bit about Well-Architected itself, what it is, the framework, the tool, and partner applications of the tool. But we also do have a couple of lenses, specific views on specific types of applications, and we also introduced a few new ones this year, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we've had this concept of lenses for about 3 years. We came out with serverless IoT and HPC in 2017. And really, what a lens is so it's still general cloud best practices, but it's focused specifically on either a technology space, a problem space, or an industry vertical. For instance, this year we released FSI industry vertical. And so that's
the financial service industry, right?
Financial services industry. So we, the purpose behind these is to allow you to focus on a particular thing. But what we announced this year, the thing that excites me the most is actually the SaaS lens, right? So not only is it kind of like, I guess part of my heart, because I built some software as a service in previous jobs. And I know the authors quite well, but I think it really it illustrates it well. The other lens we released is really in direct support of the ISV program, and so it's based upon what we used to call a technical baseline review, which was really questions that you needed to pass in order to be part of the AWS partner program. And we've changed the name because no one would understand technical baseline if we put that out as a name. We call it a foundational technical review, and it's still very strongly oriented. But what this allows our ISVs to actually understand the bar they're going to have to meet in order to be accepted into the program, and they can work on it before they actually come find out about it, and then have to go do more work in order to be accepted. So this gives them the ability to discover this themselves instead of us having to basically lead them through the program and have the normal missteps that happen during business processes.
Sure. So why don't you talk a little bit more about the SaaS lens that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so so like I said, it's more focused questions based upon it. So just to give you an example, one of them is related to security. So we already have an existing best practice of every identity should have least privilege access, right? And so one of the unique things to SaaS is that you actually have these different types of users that you don't have in a normal application that you deploy. Normally you have internal administrative type users, and you might have an administrative user of the application itself, and then you have external users that use the application. With ISV, it adds an extra, or not ISV, sorry, with SaaS it adds an extra complexity.
You have tenants all of a sudden.
Yeah. So you've got tenants which are have a user access. You've got administrators that have access. You have tenant administrators, and then you have users of the SaaS, right? Yeah. So it adds an extra layer. And so what it really emphasizes is that you need to think about all these when you're creating it and understand where those not barriers, but boundaries are of the permissions that you want to grant.
Yeah,
and manage those.
One thing that's really hard with software as a service products is tenant isolation. You need to make sure that they can't cross each other's boundaries. Right. Yeah. That's interesting.
And that's another thing is like we already have a best practice of you need boundaries between your, let's say, pre-production systems and production, right, to ensure that you're not having bleed over. But you have that additional, how do you ensure that the administrative user on one tenant can't access another tenant's stuff, and so that's another layer that, like I said, it's in the base framework, but you don't. We too many times we find that people don't consider this as when they look at that, and so this is a more focused question to get you to think about it, and that's the way that lenses work. Is if you were very well educated in building these systems, you might be able to extrapolate them, but they're not intuitively obvious. And so this gives us the ability to actually pull these things out so that they're top of mind when you're building something like that. And SaaS really, I think they've done an excellent job of creating that focus.
Yeah. And what are some of the other lenses that we have? You mentioned IoT, you mentioned serverless, right? Any others?
Yes, so we actually have an analytics lens and a machine learning lens that were released this year. We're actively working with both of those to get them integrated into the tool sometime in the near future. Anyone who has ever worked with AWS knows that our roadmaps are fuzzy, I guess, to say the least. But we've hired people on our team to focus directly on that. So machine learning is obviously hot right now, and what I would say one of the things that it allows people to do is, the classic machine learning engineer is very smart around the algorithms and feature selection and model training, evaluating the results of that. They're quite often not so good about, like, how do I actually
deploy an EC2 instance,
right, and operate it and make it secure and everything else. And so what this allows you to learn is really the best practices around that, to make sure that you don't violate any of your own internal policies and procedures, and be educated about it as you're building your systems. So I think we talk about well-architected as learn, measure, and improve. The learning aspect can't also be minimized. With these, you really can learn a lot by reading this, reading the white papers and reading the material that we have, that will set you up well for being able to build systems that will be well architected to begin.
Yeah, just going through the white paper is so valuable. That's what I actually usually did when I had a well-architected review with the customer, that I asked them to read the white paper up front, so that we are on a similar baseline, and they already started thinking. Every time I went into the meeting and we sat down, they were already like, "Oh, we already have some things here. Can we start working on them? How can we do that in a different way?" So they already started asking me, as a solutions architect, how can they architect their application, their software, in a way that is better, because very often you're used to traditional ways. But anyway, I'm sorry. Anyway, you mentioned the partner lens. What is it? Foundational
technical review is what it's called.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's something that's really important for ISV partners. Isn't that right, Lauren?
yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually 2 weeks ago during Doug Eames' keynote here at reInvent, he just announced the new ISV partner path, which essentially is a streamlined access to all of the benefits in the APN, whether it's differentiation, co-sell, go-to-market, and funding. And the whole concept around the new ISV partner path is there's a strong emphasis on making sure that you're building solutions based on best practices. And the foundational technical review lens and the SaaS lens are built into this new partner path as the focus of making sure that we're building solutions that are built based on these best practices. And so essentially ISVs, rather than needing to focus on getting their training and certs and opportunities and all of those things to get to advanced tier, now the requirements are around do your well-architected review and then do a one-on-one engagement with the partner solution architect through that foundational technical review. So the foundational technical review lens that we announced essentially is that self-assessment for those partners to make sure that they don't have any risks when they go to talk to that partner solution architect. And what I really like about this new ISV partner path is it's actually changing the emphasis on validating partners at a partner level and giving them a badge on the partner level, but we're actually we're validating and reviewing solutions on the solution level. So if a partner or an ISV has multiple solutions, each and every one of them will need to do that well-architected review, and they'll need to do the foundational technical review. And that means that we're building more of that customer trust, because those ISVs are now being built in a way and reviewed in a way that is scalable and mitigates risk for both the ISV and that end customer.
Yeah, it makes quality sustainable for our partners as well, for the customers of our partners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing.
It's an important piece because I talked about how well-architected in general is designed to ask about cloud best practices. So you can implement those best practices in either code you write yourself, AWS services and features, or partner products, right? And we want to ensure that those partner products are things that, again, just drop in and meet a best practice, right? So that this really tells a good story for using that, because most of our customers are already using these partner products. And so, we want to continue to have them use the tools that they're comfortable with. Because it is well architected. There's nothing wrong with it, with that implementation, and it will accelerate their adoption of the cloud and accelerate their ability to take advantage of the cloud.
Yeah, right. Anyway,
yeah,
please go ahead, Lauren.
I was going to say, and most of our partners in the APN today are SaaS providers. So really the SaaS lens is great because it is those additional best practices. So foundational technical review, it's once you meet those requirements, but we really recommend for all SaaS providers within the APN, once they've met that bar, to continuously use the SaaS lens to make sure that they're staying up to date with those best practices as well.
Yeah, and that's really one thing that I mentioned before is the well-architected review. No matter which lens you actually use, or if you use a lens at all, it's not one thing that you do and then you're done and then you are well-architected. You never are done. Like with any piece of software, you're constantly working, you're learning, you're adapting, and you can always improve. And it really helps with the balancing, having I'm sorry, I'm missing the word right now. I'm not an native English speaker, so sometimes I'm missing words. Anyway, so it's really important to have a look at it every now and then and go through the different workloads that you work on, the different applications that you have, to really make sure that you are on a good track and that you work in a well-architected way, right?
Yeah, and there's a couple of reasons I think we would say that we want to do these reviews. frequently, so there's a couple of learnings that we've had internally, which is, today's modern agile development, you're constantly making small incremental changes, and that is a best practice. It lessens the risk on every deployment that you do. But so most companies had policies and procedures. When you'd make major changes, you'd review everything to make sure it was good before it went out. Well, these small changes, they add up to a large change over time. And internally, we actually have, tooling to ensure that we meet our own policies and procedures. And there's an internal tool that records the results of your review for all our internal services. And if you exceed 12 months without entering a new review, you get a SEV2 ticket to go execute it.
Yeah,
right?
you might want to explain what a SEV2 ticket is.
SEV1 is everything's down. Andy Jassy is mad at everyone. A SEV2 is you need to fix this today.
Yeah, SEV2 basically at AWS, SEV2 is what most companies have as a SEV1, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you can address it by saying that you're going to do it now, right? You're going to kick one off right now, and that'll reduce the severity, so it goes down to that. So it's no longer firing alarms at your vice president level. But most people don't want to, get that.
Have an alarm at the vice president.
Exactly. So we've got, that's one of the things you hear AWS Tech about, that good intentions are just good intentions. And if you have a mechanism, you can actually accomplish things. That's the mechanism we use to enforce it. And I'm at the state where I'm actually encouraging companies to have similar mechanisms. You guys should really, enforce a review every year to make sure you do it. And the other reason is that we constantly update it, right? So we released a new version last July, which is the first one since the tool got released. But prior to that, we had released them before. It was a little bit simpler for a couple of reasons. One was we were releasing basically white papers, and we were releasing it in English only. I think we did localize the main framework white paper into a couple of languages, but with the tool, it's localized into 10 different languages. And so it took us a little while to get all the policies, the procedures down for us to be able to localize it and to release it. But that will continually happen, right? We will be continually updating. This includes the lenses. The lenses are going to get constant updates. And if you're not looking at it, these, don't forget, these are based upon what customers really do, right? It's not just us saying you should do this and speaking from some kind of high horse. This is based upon what customers actually do.
Right. We're in the trenches all the time, basically. We are working with so many customers, with so many partners. And one of our largest customer is Amazon.com. Where many of these things derive from, but also from our own experience at AWS, but all our customers in all the different industries and different areas where they're working. So,
one note on that too. We launched the APIs with 7 partners, and they support more of this continuous monitoring across the well-architected framework. So we just talked about how important it is to review your workloads frequently. A lot of these partners, they will do this on a daily basis. And so you're always tracking those changes. And what's great about the APIs and this integration is that they always have the most up-to-date best practices that AWS has released. So anytime we make an update in the tool, those partners have those best practices as well. And so I just mentioned that because, it can be time consuming to do a full well-architected review, and they should be done every year, but also using one of these cloud governance tools can really support customers and partners to make sure they're always following best practices. So just to give you kind of a few partners that we're working with other than NOps and Trend Micro, CloudOne Conformity, we have Turbot, who they have over 7,000 policy checks. We have Cloud Checker, who has over 30 frameworks that they are automating against, including well-architected CIS, HIPAA, NIST, and PCI DSS.
So you really have continuous compliance, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about your healthcare life science partner. You have the HIPAA guidance there as well. And, we've got Datadog and Continuity Software and Splunk, and they're all providing insights based off of the well-architected reviews. So I do recommend for any partners or customers who are looking for that continuous compliance to work with one of these API integrated partners.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a really great point, because compliance in the past, compliance used to be a point in time. We look at it and everybody hopes that we don't look in the right place, right?
Yeah.
And with continuous compliance, you can really just be sure that everything is being checked automatically, continuously, and you're able to see if something's off, but also you're able to prove that things were compliant.
Exactly.
And that's a great thing to have as well. So I think we have to wrap it up. It's been a great conversation. It was great to have you on the show. reInvent this year was really different for all of us. For some of us, like Rodney, I guess you've seen so many, so many, but this one was so different. 3 weeks, so much material, 5 keynotes. Everybody was able to watch it from their home. It didn't cost anything. We didn't get to go to Vegas, but on the other hand, we didn't have to go to Vegas. Depending on who you are, you might find that is a good thing or a bad thing. But was there anything announced during reInvent, maybe apart from the well-architected tool and its API and the lenses, anything that you really liked, Lauren, during this reInvent?
Absolutely. So we talked about the SaaS lens, obviously, and there's so many benefits for both ISVs and customers. ISVs, you get rapid innovation and agility and cost optimization and all of those things. And customers, it's more simplified IT management. However, moving to SaaS can be challenging for ISVs. So there's like new operational tooling and billing, all of those things we talked about, multi-tenant isolation, all of those things can be really challenging to move to a SaaS model. So one of the things that was announced that I think is really exciting for ISVs, because that's kind of where I live, is SaaS Boost. That was in Doug's keynote, and SaaS Boost is an open source reference environment, and it helps developers transform their existing applications to SaaS products. So that I think is going to be a game changer. Once you've used SaaS Boost, you've moved to a SaaS product, then you can use a SaaS lens and make sure that you're following all the best practices.
Yeah, if any one of you watching this is going to build or planning to build, or even in the process of building a software as a service application, definitely have a look at that, because that's really great. Rodney, what about you? Did you find anything interesting?
So there's a number of things, because obviously the well-architected framework covers a wide thing. So I'll talk about the things I think really will help our customers be well-architected. And then the one thing that I had suspected we were going to release for the longest time, and I'm very pleased to see it's there, but it's also a little surprising. So let's talk about the well-architected related ones. So all the system manager enhancements, right? The operations is near and dear to my heart. I learned the importance of good operations and building your systems to be operable decades ago. So I'll just call that system manager asterisk. Because,
change manager, fleet manager, application manager.
Those things are all great.
Yeah.
And then don't forget the Amazon Lookout for metrics, which we had the anomaly detector earlier, but this is also applying machine learning models to things to tell you things, and I think that's those things are going to help operations. Obviously, for reliability, which is near and dear to my heart since I joined as a reliability expert, the fault injection simulator it's been speculated and proposed for years, and I'm so happy that it's finally released, because we do really see customers really doing this fault injection simulation and resiliency testing. It used to be a medium risk, but now all our successful customers do it. So we mark it as a high risk if you're not doing it. DevOps Guru is another one. It's analogous to the Code Guru, right? So a machine learning model for where you have problems. If something shows up anomalous out of all your configuration and things that you're deploying, you can now get an alert when that happens.
Yeah, we had so many great things, especially in the operational space this year. That's right. Yeah.
So the service that I said that was kind of like both expected and unexpected, but I'm really excited about, is the Amazon location service, right? So it has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about, but nonetheless, I've been expecting it for a long time, because I've heard customer demand. They've been using other mapping services, and they're all great. Don't get me wrong, but you know, it also is kind of one of those where it's like, well, it's released, and I'm not surprised because I've heard so much demand for it. But then on the other hand, it's like, you know, it is kind of a like I didn't see it coming.
Yeah,
So,
wow. And now for something completely different, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why I like it.
Yeah. All right. I think we're really done here. Thank you everyone for watching. If you want to find out more about the Well-Architected framework, the tool, the API, have a look at Amazon.com, aws.amazon.com/architecture/Well-Architected. I'll leave that on the screen for a minute. Lauren, Rodney, everybody else who was on the stream today, thank you so much. It was great to have you on the show. I had so much fun, and it was really interesting. Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. Goodbye.